I remember the first time I came to the Soğanlı Valley. It was the summer of 2012, and I was a young man in search of answers. I wanted simplicity in a world that seemed too complex. I wanted something I could relate to. I wanted something that made sense to me. Above all, I wanted something tangible that I could look at and understand completely. I found none of these things. Instead, I found Geyikli Kilise. From the very beginning, I knew the task ahead of me was going to be difficult, but I took some comfort in the fact that I wasn't the first one to come here. In the 20th century, the area had been surveyed by the likes of Soğanlı and Bell, Robert Austerhout, and Tolga Uyar. Having read their work, I could safely say that the Geyikli Kilise was located approximately halfway down the southern of the two Soğanlı valleys, not far from the modern village of Soğanlı. The complex includes a church with 2 naves, a refectory of outstanding quality carving, and numerous outlying structures, some containing burials. Indeed, the complex was characterized by the presence of burials. What's more, I knew that, while the Soğanlı Valley was home to dozens of churches, the Geyikli Kilise was distinguished by its proximity to a structure called the Han by the locals, now considered a secular residence. The 2 edifices stand virtually opposite one another in the valley. Perhaps the monastery was a pious endowment to the lord of the so-called Han. Perhaps this lord was buried in the monastery and is the protospatarios John Skipidis mentioned in an inscription recorded by Soğanlı. If so, who was this man? How was he related to the Michael Skipidis mentioned in the Karabaş Kilise? And what is a spatarios anyway? I needed answers. I needed help. I needed Rob.
Hello, I'm Robert Brown, and you join me today at the site of Geyikli, one of the most important sites for our understanding of life in Byzantine Cappadocia. Visitors to the site today enter the main complex via a rectangular vestibule which is situated in front of the finely carved church and burial chapel. I believe that this area would once have been covered by rock, which has since collapsed. There may have been a decorated facade at the front, facing outwards towards the Soğanlı Valley and the site of the Han, the large mansion complex of the Skipidis family who financed Geyikli. Today, the vestibule is open to the elements, its walls containing a number of small niches and a hole in the northeast corner which falls into the chamber below. The site's principal liturgical space is a double nave construction formed of 2 barrel vaults. The most northern of the 2 and adjacent to the vestibule was employed as a burial chapel and furnished with a fine decorative programme, elements of which still survive. We will look at this room in greater detail later. The farther barrel vaulted space is far wider than the burial chapel and was used as the main church of the complex. The walls of the nave are augmented with a rhythmic pattern of simple but precise decorative carving. Pilasters separate large rectangular spaces, evoking arcades, which are bordered and sunk slightly into the wall of the church. The decorative pattern continues from the walls across the vault, which is spanned by spaced, carved bands which extend from the capitals of the columns. A ledge, raised slightly above the ground, upon which the pilasters stand, runs around the length of the nave and is mirrored by another ledge which skirts the length of the room at the height of the pilaster capitals. There are windows cut into the north wall. However, their crude carving is at odds with the precise decorative programme displayed in the nave, indicating that they are later modifications to the room. In addition, the apse of the church is furnished with a striking stone templon screen, which is pierced by a large entrance, and on either side a window above and a bordered niche below, where it is possible that icons might have been kept. Within the apse there is a carved altar which extends from the far wall, above which are 3 narrow windows, evenly spaced and well carved. The rock-cut construction of the church means that there is no exterior view for the windows to look out upon. Instead, in a manner akin to many of the rock-cut churches and chapels of Cappadocia, the decorative programme is intended to create the illusion of a masonry church, incorporating many of the features, including columned arcades and apse windows, that one might find in masonry churches, but for an entirely ornamental purpose. The carved decoration of the church indicates that those designing and overseeing its composition had a clear plan for the space and were well acquainted with geometric and artistic techniques, the calibre of artisans reflecting the great wealth of the donors of the site. On the west wall of the church, a small passage leads to another room. The opening to this passage is framed by a ledge which bisects the rectangular space into which it was carved, indicating that it, and therefore the room beyond, may well have been constructed at the same time as the main church. The room beyond is barrel vaulted, but far simpler in appearance than the church or the burial chapel, without a carved decorative programme. There are a number of niches in the side walls and the far wall of the room. However, the very rough nature of these niches and the great discrepancy they display in size, depth and spacing leads me to theorise that most of, and possibly all of the niches in this space were later additions. Whilst the rooms to the east were clearly designed to be visually impressive to the viewer, there were no such concerns when this room was created. Unfortunately, its original purpose remains unclear. Let's take a look in this room. Now, what we have here in this wonderfully carved space is what is known as a refectory, where in the Middle Ages the Byzantines would have sat down to eat their meals. The carved decoration found in the refectory is exceptionally lavish by the standards of medieval Cappadocia. The east wall is divided into 2 tiers of carving designed to evoke arcades. A finely carved trapeza, on which food could be set, with a row of seating carved on both sides, runs almost the entire length of the eastern part of the room. At the far end, we find the precisely detailed abbot's throne. To the abbot's left, a small hole leads through a dividing wall into the southern part of the room. On the other side of the wall, from the abbot, the hole is surrounded by a finely carved border with a ledge. I believe that this intriguing feature may have been used as a method to pass messages to the abbot during meals without disturbing the other diners, who may well have been expected to eat in quiet contemplation. There is, however, no concrete sign of a kitchen to serve the refectory during its period of use. A room carved into a rock pinnacle nearby was certainly used as a kitchen at some point, containing a large chimney similar in form to others seen at sites in Cappadocia. However, the thick smoke stains in the room indicate that the chimney was not very effective, throwing the idea that it was contemporary with the refectory into doubt. It could be, however, that the chimney is original and over time became less and less suitable for ventilation through wear and blockage. It could also be that the original kitchen was a now lost masonry construction. The presence of the refectory indicates that the site had a monastic function associated with the commemoration of the dead. The area is surrounded by numerous burials. In some cases we find single arcosolia. In others, several graves are dug into far more lavish burial chapels. One of the most interesting of these chapels is carved into a rock pinnacle to the east of the main complex. This is a very small space which contains 7 graves of various sizes, including 2 designed for infants. The room's fine carved and painted decoration indicates that this might well be the burial chapel of a wealthy family, perhaps even that of the Scapides.
Now, here's an interesting room. This space is one of the more mysterious on the site.
The current entrance to this room appears to have been opened much later than the time of its construction. Instead, the original entrance was through a narrow tunnel opening in the southern wall. To the side of this opening there is a niche with a groove in the bottom where a large cylindrical stone, which now lies broken on the floor of the room, was placed and could be rolled across the mouth of the tunnel, sealing the room from the inside. The fact that the room can only be opened and closed by someone inside the room rules out that its primary intended function was as a storeroom, though this may have been its actual day-to-day use, but instead suggests that it was designed to be a refuge. The date that this room was constructed remains a mystery. Was it built as a matter of course along with the rest of the site, or later? If we were to date the earliest phase of construction to the late 9th or mid-10th century, the threat of Arab incursions was still present in Byzantium's eastern provinces. Or perhaps we should see this room as having been carved during the mid to late 11th century to respond to the spreading threat of Seljuk raiders. Overall, I believe that we should see this site as an important place of burial from an earlier period, fitting in with the wider context of burial sites in the nearby area, which later had a lavish monastic complex built upon it by the financial donation of the powerful Scapides family. The family had several ornately decorated spaces set out for its members, and once they had passed on, the monks based in the area could come to the site at specific times of the year and offer prayers of intercession for the departed.
Now this is one of the most fascinating rooms on the site, with an intriguing link to Byzantine military history. And in order to explain this to you better, I'm going to pass you on to my colleague Maria.